Hi, this is Grandma here, and we're talking today about It's a Jungle Out There by Ron Snell. And each chapter is kind of a contained story about the adventures of now 4 children whose parents are missionaries in the Peru jungle. And today we're going to do chapter 8, and it's called Man of the House. And before each chapter is a photograph of someone or something that happens in the story. And obviously the story is looks like it's going to be more about his sisters, Melody and Sandy. Ron is the author, and his brother Terry is a year older than he is. When school got out early, June 1958, we were raring to get back to Mashigingas, and that is the Indian tribe with whom they live. And their good home cooking, especially Melody. She was 21 months old by then and getting to be a lot of fun. She had cute black curls and probably looked more normal to the Indians than any of the rest of us. Ron and Terry are 2 very blonde boys. So they would look very different to the Indians. Moving on. She loved to imitate everything the Mashigingas did, including eating her food with just the right fingers and crying exactly like their kids did. How soon are we going to the tribe? I wanted to know. Well, we wanted to go right away, but we can't go until we're all over our colds, Mom answered, blowing her nose. The Machis had so few immunities that colds quickly turned into flu and pneumonia, and they died by the dozens. Where are we going to stay when we get out there? Sandy asked. So far, we had lived in Timpia, Etiratio, Pangoa, and Kamasai. Mashiginga villages were sprouting all over as the Indians gathered together so they could have school and access to medicine. We're going to go over to the Manu for a while, Dad answered. The Manu River was on a different watershed from the rest of the Mashiginga villages. All of us, except Melody, sniffled and coughed impatiently at Yarnakacha as the precious days of summer vacations raced by. Mom and I got worse instead of better and soon had bronchitis. Our flight plans changed each day as our medical prognosis got worse. About the time Terry started to get better, Melody finally joined in with a blistering hot temperature and a fiery red face. My own fever went higher, making me wonder why they called it a cold. What should it be called if his fever is going up? Maybe hot? Dad finally came up with a major revision in plans. It looks like Terry and I are going to get better before the rest of you. So why don't we just go out ahead of you all? I'll try to find someone to go with us, and we can travel by boat, visiting some of the villages downriver until you catch up with us. I tried every which way to make Dad think I was well enough to go, but the thermometer wouldn't lie, and I couldn't stop coughing while I was telling him how good I felt. I was doomed to stay behind. In the end, Gene Smith, the principal of our little school, was happy to go with Dad. Since school was out, he was glad for the chance to get away from Yarnakacha for a while. His son Terry would go too. That makes 2 Terrys, because Ron's brother is also Terry. By Friday, June 20th, Mom and I were better, but Melody was worse. She came down with diarrhea, which at least provided plenty of stool specimens to give to the lab technicians at the clinic. The report said she was loaded with amoeba, which probably came from eating everything the Indians gave her the last time she was out in the tribe, along with a bunch of stuff that Indians didn't give her. Villages aren't very healthy places for little kids who like to pick up whatever they can stick into their mouths. That afternoon, the temperature climbed to 102. Excuse me, her temperature climbed to 102. She may have had amoeba, but that wasn't the only problem. During the night, she shook with chills and sweated with fever and started vomiting in the morning. It obviously wasn't a normal cold, but what else could it be? She didn't eat anything all day, and except for times when she was napping, Mom spent the whole day holding her. Melody hadn't eaten anything but a little ice cream again, the fourth day in a row. She was still running a fever and slept most of the morning on our well-padded dining room table. I'm wondering if I should just postpone our flight again, Chica, Dad told Mom, using his pet name for her. I don't feel very good about leaving you and our sick little girl when we're not sure what's wrong with her. I'm not even taking a radio with me, so we won't be able to talk while I'm gone. Dad planned to take a receiver so he could listen to news from Yaranacacha, but he wouldn't be able to respond. The transmitter and the generator that powered the two-way were just too heavy and bulky for river travel. Well, it still just seems like a bad cold or the flu or something like that, Mom reassured him. I think we'll be all right if she'll just start eating again. Tuesday morning, to Dad's relief, Melody had a bit of an appetite. Well, now that I've seen her eat something, I guess I can go happy, he told Mom. Just before he got on the plane, Dad pulled me aside. You're going to have to be the man of the house while we're separated, he solemnly told me. Do your best to help Mom and take good care of Sandy until Melody gets better. I soberly nodded my head to show that I understood. I would rather have been the 6-year-old tag-along in the village than the 6-year-old man of the house in Yaranacacha, but I didn't have much choice. We watched the plane until it lifted off the lake and shrank into a tiny dot just over the horizon. Then we went back up the hill to our house, where Sandy and Melody and I all had to lie down for a while. The trip to see the plane off had been my first venture out of the house for a couple of weeks. When Sandy and I got up, Melody was still sleeping in her bed. In a few minutes, we heard a noise and ran to see what had happened. Mom, Melody just fell on the floor and she can't get up, I called. Mom thought it was because she'd been carried around so much for 5 days. That afternoon, Melody got down from her chair to get a cookie she dropped. She once again ended up in a heap on the floor. Mom sat down a few feet away, a worried look on her face. Melody, can you come to Mommy? She held out her hands invitingly, but Melody's legs just buckled when she tried to walk. Ronnie, keep an eye on Sandy, Mom told me with worry in her voice. I've got to get Melody up to the clinic. Something's wrong with her legs. Mom scooped her up and headed for the door. Her obvious concern was contagious, and for the first time I was afraid of what might have happened to our little sister. Has she had her polio shots? Uncle Doc Eichenberger asked while he checked Melody over. Well, she had the first 2, but not the 3rd one yet, Mom answered. If it's not polio, it may be a mild form of meningitis. Uncle Doc said thoughtfully after he'd taken a blood sample, that would be consistent with the 5 days of fever. Keep her as quiet and comfortable as you can. We'll see how she's doing in the morning. The more she stays flat on her back, the better, because it'll minimize any spinal cord irritation. In case you were wondering what meningitis is, it is a swelling of the spinal cord, and it is a bacterial infection, I believe. Waiting was a pain, literally and figuratively. Melody didn't want to stay down, and Mom had a hard time feeding her flat on her back. Besides, Melody was obviously feeling a lot of pain every time she moved. Mom borrowed a baby buggy from friends and took Melody for long rides around the center, just to relieve the boredom. By Thursday, Uncle Doc advised Mom to bring her to the clinic for more tests. They would start with an x-ray to check for tuberculosis. Depending on the x-rays, they might have to do a spinal tap as well. The x-ray was at least easy to get. Mom waited while Uncle Doc took the film into the darkroom and developed it himself. When he came out, all he said was, "I think we'd better do a spinal tap too." Melody never took life stoically. Giving her a simple shot would have been a wrestling match, and trying to get her a spinal tap was next to impossible. She thrashed and screamed. It took Mom plus 2 nurses to hold her down. They had to bend her into a painful position, hold her still, and while it was all over, the whole fight had been useless. Nothing had come out. Uncle Doc had to give up. While waiting for a syringe to boil, he sat down across the emergency table from Mom. "I think we have to consider the possibility of tuberculosis meningitis," he said. "I found a spot on her lung. Not very clear, but still there. If that's what we're dealing with, it's extremely urgent that you get her some good help immediately." Polio and meningitis shared some of the same symptoms since they both attacked the brain and spinal cord. But since Melody had had polio shots, meningitis seemed more likely. Kind of like we're having now with COVID and the flu and a cold. Which is it? They show the same symptoms. "You should fly to Lima as soon as you can and go directly on to Panama. There's a hospital there that specializes in tropical diseases, and Melody will get excellent care. Besides, it's closer than the U.S., and every hour counts." Mom walked home in a daze. Neighbors and friends rallied to pray, help pack, and make travel reservations for Saturday. Aunt Elaine Townsend, Uncle Cam's wife, came over right in the middle of the mess to help pack and to hand Mom an envelope full of money for medical bills. Aunt Virginia Smith, Jean's wife, offered to keep Sandy and me. It all happened so fast that Sandy and I were just kind of fending for ourselves, lost in the whirlwind. We ran errands and tried to help entertain Melody, but there wasn't much we could do for her. Uncle Doc went to the radio tower and talked to the operator. "Broadcast a message every once in a while to Ron Snell, telling him to get to a transmitter as soon as possible. If he answers, connect him to my phone immediately." They never got the message. Thursday night and Friday morning were the worst. Melody cried continuously in constant pain, her dark ringlets soaked with sweat. I watched her while Mom went to the dining hall to pick up some breakfast for us. When someone asked her how Melody was doing, Mom just burst into tears. "I think she's getting worse and worse," she cried, "and I don't know if we can get her help in time. She can hardly move without screaming now." Panama City seemed a long way off, and every hour's delay increased the risk of permanent brain damage or death. When Uncle Doc came that morning to examine Melody, he disagreed with Mom. "I think she's doing a bit better," he said, kind of to himself, even though Melody had started screaming again when she saw him coming. We all grew up with a reverence approaching worship of Uncle Doc, one of the world's best authorities on tropical medicine, but at the time Melody thought of him as nothing but a pain in the back. "It looks to me like whatever it is, it's settling in her right side, especially in her right leg," he went on. "I'm starting to suspect polio again, although it's really hard to tell without good lab tests. Let's hold off on the trip to Lima for now. I'll give her a skin test so we can really check out the tuberculosis angle, and then I'll call to get your reservations canceled. Mom told Sandy and me the good news that she and Melody wouldn't be leaving. Oh, well, I answered philosophically, maybe some other time when you get real sick, Aunt Virginia can take care of us. We all liked Aunt Virginia, and not getting to stay with her was a big disappointment. Besides, it would have been nice to just eat some real meals at home with someone. Polio would be a big relief compared to meningitis, especially since it didn't seem to be advancing any further. As Uncle Doc told us, if we could choose between meningitis and polio, I'd sure take the polio. Even so, there was a good possibility of paralysis, especially in Melody's legs. By the next week, it was clear that she could at least move everything: toes, arms, legs, head. She started getting hot soaks for her legs, and they slowly came back to life. Although for a couple more weeks, she pretty much stayed on our dining room table, where she could see everything that was going on. Mom and I took turns watching her so she wouldn't roll off, and I sort of made sure that we all got fed. Usually I took Sandy to our group dining hall for breakfast, lunch, and supper. After we'd eaten, I carried a plate home for Mom, who seldom left Melody for more than a few minutes. Although it only lasted about 3 weeks, I got tired of eating alone, tired of carrying the laundry over to the laundromat, tired of being the man of the house. Remember, he was only 6 years old. Our neighbors and friends all pitched in to help like one big family. Their concern was heartwarming. In the end, Mom returned a lot of the money that had been donated because the whole clinic bill had come to just over $20. By the time Dad got the news and flew back to Yaranacocha, the crisis was over. A couple days later, he once again pulled me aside. Mommy says she doesn't know how she would have survived without your help. She said you've done way more than your share to take care of her and Melody and Sandy. I want to give you a little gift to show you how thankful I am. I didn't feel that I'd been very good man of the house, but he gave me a brand new hand saw with 6 interchangeable blades. I was very proud of it, but forgot it under a mango tree one of the first times I used it. By the time I found it again, the blades had all rusted into one. In the end, it really was polio, and the muscles in Melody's legs were seriously affected. She walked with braces for a while, then began a series of corrective surgeries that have left her walking almost normally. With her determination, her legs have seldom slowed her down. They say Melody probably got the polio from the daughter of a Mashaginga friend. We didn't know until much later that there were many children in the area who had polio that year. They say Melody was lucky to have had 2 shots already, since that probably minimized the damage. They say we should be very grateful that we had colds in June, or we would have been in the middle of nowhere, far from medical help of any sort when our sister got sick. And we are very grateful. Okay, that's the end of chapter 8. Chapter 9 is called Spam Stampede, and we have a photo of what is probably a Mashaginga. What do you think that means, spam stampede? Who would have a stampede for spam? Do you like spam? Have you ever had spam? Well, I'll tell you, I would not be running for spam. I'd have to be pretty hungry to do it. It tastes a little bit like chopped ham. Okay, bye-bye.